Now we can start with the first keynote lecture.
Yeah. As we said, our first keynote lecturer is Gilles Delalex, architect and co-founder de l'agence Studio Muoto. And he will speak about Holy Highway. That is also the book that they launched of the studio. He is also professor and researcher to the École Nationale Supérieure d'Architecture Paris-Malaquais, and is also the head of the Laboratoire Infrastructure Architecture and Territoire. Gilles Delalex studied architecture in Grenoble and Montreal. He holds a master in urban planning and a doctorate of arts from Alvar Aalto University in Helsinki. He's full professor at the School of Paris-Malaquais, where he heads the department Theory, History and Project. And he has taught at NPC Paris, Harvard, and TU Vienna. He is also co-director of the LIAT, as I said, focusing on modernity and infrastructure. Studio Muoto, on the other side, is an architectural office based in Paris since 2003. Its activities cover the fields of architecture, urban planning, design, teaching, and scientific research. Muoto's work features minimal structures that can combine different activities, evolve in time, and merge economical and aesthetic issue. Muoto means form in Finnish. Okay.
Here. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. Okay. Okay, it's working. Well, hello, everybody. Thank you so much for your invitation that we've been discussing for long. So as you said, I was thinking of talking to you about this book that we released 2 years ago. It's called Holy Highway. It's not a book about motorways, actually. It's more a book, it's more an archive from the office, sources of inspiration, lots of images and text brought together. And we, of course, dealt with the figure of the infrastructure, not so much as a technical object, but as a form or proto-form of architecture that carries an aesthetic, a grammar, some myth, some stories as well. So I'm going to tell you about this book, but a lot around the book and the story somehow of the book, how we came to call it this way and focus on this topic. So as I was saying, this book is actually 2 books, 2 collections of text we've been written for the last 20 years and images that we've gathered from travels, from models we were making, projects that have been finished and lots of them unfinished. So it's a kind of material you don't see, you're not supposed to publish, but I think somewhere it allowed us to talk about something that we may call imaginary, set of images that surround a subject like a corpus, but made of text and images as well. So these are 2 collections sitting next to each other. Why the motorway in the end, since it's not about motorway, I think, or the highway. The highways for us is an interesting object because it's very divisive. Today, some people hate it and some people love it for different reasons. Pollution on one side, the way to holidays on the other side, and the view, the scenery. So it's a very difficult objects in terms of opinion because it separates territories as much as it separates opinions. And I think it's pretty much an object that says something about our relation to modernity today, of how we can continue it and criticize it at the same time. Because I would say we may have quite contradictory feelings towards modernity today. We may still have a desire for progress. We're still hoping to think of a possible future, but we also have a certain nostalgia for a time that we haven't known, but where things were more clear, where the infrastructure was a means to take us for a better future, which is not the case so much anymore today. So I was wondering, I thought I would raise the question: how can these contradictory feelings help us go toward a project-oriented approach to architecture? This is some few pages. I will come back on the book. This is the book of images. So can we take us to a certain architecture, particular kinds of project? This is, for instance, a design school we once did, a competition that was along the ring road in Paris, and we made clear reference to the bridges that would go over the ring road using the same structure. So in order to help move through this large image, I'm glued. this vast imaginary of images around the motorway, I will go through 4 figures that are actually the chapters of the book. These are totems, runes like retaining walls. We call them concrete islands, which are usually the spaces that are hidden underneath motorways or in the hollow of a motorway interchange, and phantom crowds that correspond to car parks that can be either empty or full of cars. So I will come back on this 4 subject, because I would love to start from the very beginning of that story. How did we come to study infrastructures and the motorway, especially as an office, specifically an architecture office? Huh? I think it started when, at the very beginning of the office, when we had to deal with sites such as this one. This one is a fairly empty site. You have a car park, a road at most, nothing much. And then you have to imagine a building which has to be urban, has an interesting program, mixed use, everything. But you don't have a city yet. So it's a strange position where you have to think of the city that is yet to come, that is not there yet. And that's usually the role of the primary infrastructure. Usually in the modern city, you start by laying down the streets, the roads, the phone, all the networks, and then the city comes after that. So the question is, can you imagine a project that maybe sometimes a quite small building that incorporates that function of the infrastructure that is to start to imagine the city that is going to be there in the future. This is not an easy question, although starting from an empty site is quite usual in architecture. You have a site, it's empty, and then you do building. But I think it's difficult to start from architecture in order to start a city. And I think why it is so difficult. See, I'm showing, sorry, I skipped that. We had basically, I will come back on it. We had basically 2 attitudes towards such empty site. The first one was to imagine, that depends on the program, also a micro city, that is a city that creates its own context. So you don't need a context because it creates its own, or a building that is a starting point. This one is pretty much like, it's a frame that starts from an angle, and you can imagine that the district will grow out of this initial project. So I think the difficulty we have to start from architecture is because we have this tradition from the 60s, which I would say is the tradition of the learning from. And of course, I make reference to Learning from Las Vegas, which is, you can imagine, quite a Bible for us. It's a very important book. But what this book says, more or less, is that you visit a city, and from this city, you can imagine a specific architecture. That the city holds some kind of urbanity that is very specific to it. And from there, you can learn something and imagine an architecture that sort of fits in it. So my question is it what comes first? Is it the chicken or the egg? Is it the city or is it architecture? Is the city an agglomerate of buildings or the opposite? I think the question can be thought two ways, but of course, in that book, the very important, interesting thing is that it investigates an architecture from the road. It investigates the architecture of casinos, but these casinos are not built like one street and another street and so on and so on. It's built around pretty much like it's a strip that is as big as a highway. So we wondered if we could start from that moment, that very important book, and imagine an architecture that wouldn't be just an architecture of signs, as Venturi, Scott Brown, and Isener suggested. The architecture interpreted or imagined from the architecture of casinos, but an architecture that would be initiated from the road itself, from the infrastructure itself, without the signs. And in the book, one thing that was interesting for us, and start feeling maybe a connection with the book we did, there's this series of black and white photographs, like a series of series, and as part of the investigation. And this series of photographs were inspired by the work by Edouard Rocher, sorry, I have to pronounce it the right way. And Edouard Rocher did his book exactly 10 years before, 672. He did his first book in 62, and it was probably the first book as an artwork. Like, it's not a painting, it's not a sculpture, it's a book. And what's specific about a book, it comes as a series. And the first time it was published, there were like 400 books, then went to 500, then 3,000. And the last series were not even numbered, I think, explicitly to say, well, it's just a matter of repetition. So Venturi, Scott Brown, and Isener made explicit reference to this book that's called 26 Gasoline Station, which contains exactly what the title says, that is 26 gas stations along a way that goes from Los Angeles, where Ed Rocher used to live, and goes to Oklahoma City, where his mom lived, and he used to take this way. And he took 26 gas stations. And I found this quote in an interview in Art Forum when he's asked about his title and stuff, and he says, maybe gasoline is not a very important word. important word is stations, such as Stations of the Cross. So somehow it refers to his probably this Catholic upbringing, and you see another connections I'm making with the holy idea. And I think it's interesting because he focuses on the stations themselves and not on the way, not on the movement, but on the moments where you stay, the different steps. Which I think is quite an interesting thing, because a station means to stay, doesn't mean to move. So I think that's his focus, and that's why maybe he focuses on architecture. And another key word, which he didn't mention, but which is very clear, is the word standard, because maybe as you know, he took one of the pictures, I think the one in Amarillo, Texas, and from that photograph he made a series of paintings. And these paintings are very famous. They're famous not just because of the word standards and this big sign. It's also because this is a strange kind of painting that exists in many, many versions. And he started a series just repainting, changing it, the skies, playing on the sign. So he started another series, which were painting. He stopped and then come back, and of course continue to investigate the American landscape with apartments in Los Angeles. Went back on the paintings, starting another book, which was about parking lots. And I think he probably started, I'm not a specialist of Ed Ruscha, but I think it's quite inspiring. We see he has been a strong influence on many artists and even architects. And I think he developed quite a method to look at things, to interpret the landscape, because maybe relates to the sort of withdrawal of the author. When he explains that when he was taking this photograph, these are aerial photographs, he didn't take the pictures himself. He just sent someone, and he said, well, I think the subject, the content is more important than the style. Okay, so there's no style, but there's something else that comes from this serial vision. And contrary to Ventry, he says, well, I think there's nothing to learn from my work. Currently, from this series, they won't teach you anything, which I think is a bit of a provocation, because I think there's a lot to learn from his work. And I would say maybe an important lesson would be that what is important in his work is repetition. And basically it's my interpretation, but what you could say is that a very simple, ordinary architecture, repeated and repeated, becomes quite strong. It becomes quite a strong figure. And as a matter of fact, there's no difference without repetition. The difference, there's difference between the series. One series, car parks are not the same as stations, which are not the same as apartments. And there's also differences within the series, within the different photos. And you may say, well, all car parks are the same. But if you look at them, sitting next one to each other, well, you see they're all different, actually. So it's a way of creating identity as well. And I'm not going to quote Deleuze, but Deleuze has worked quite a lot on this idea of repetition and difference. And he was using quite nice image. He says, look at festivals. Festival of music, rock festival. The more it repeats itself, the more it builds up its own identity. Because every year it's a different festival. The program is always different, and this festival itself, the series itself, gains identity as well. And I would say maybe another lesson is that the road. I think the figure of the road is everywhere in his photos, and you may think that the road is actually the true counterpart of the city, because the city always has an entrance and an exit, and that relates to the theme of today's event. And somehow it's the road, as in Venturi's book, that is the most fundamental aspect of the city, because if the city wasn't connected to other cities, it wouldn't exist at all. So what we did, actually 30 years after that, 2012, 2002, we did our own book with was my PhD, actually, in the end. We decided to sort of continue that Ed Rusche Venturi's kind of survey, and we made a travel that crossed 11 countries in Europe. So that wouldn't go from Los Angeles to Oklahoma City, but I was already living in Paris, so it started from Paris, went all around Europe, and came back to Paris. It was pretty much a loop. So we made a series of photos as well that tend to be quite neutral as Roche's photos, but they were more targeted. Somehow we focused on certain themes that would repeat themselves from station to station, just a bit like him, just to show that there were lots of differences. So these are toilets, were canopies, also totems, and night atmospheres, because stations are often, open 24 hours a day. And the idea became clear that the motorway for us became pretty much like a city on the move. We lived on the motorway for 3 months. I wouldn't do it twice, but that was quite of an experience. But you could see you could live on the motorway, because everything you find in a city, you can find it on the motorway. Motels, hotels, street furniture, bars, cafes. You got vending machines. You got everything, taking a slightly different form. But the motorway somehow is more urban than we think. It doesn't have the density of a European city, but maybe more in Europe than in America. It is filled with activity. So what we thought is that this standard character that Roche raised was not like a absurd consequence of modernization, but maybe we had to see that standard character more as a capacity to make, a way to make it possible to live on the motorway. That means standard doesn't mean that things repeat themselves, or reduces the content, or it means that things are not similar but compatible. It's like the USB here, or the euro currency, the Visa. It's the thing that allows you to go to one place and another and share something in common. So it's the base of any public space. It's the essence of publicness. You can take it this way. And the other things we realize is that social behaviors on the motorway were a bit wilder and eccentric than in city centers, because you have lots of rules, turn right, left, but social rules do not apply really. And this, you can notice that there was lots of trafficking near the borders. People would run, do sports, kids would vomit out of the car, and you had lovers meetings. There are lots of stories about what happens on motorways, on these weird places that belong to nobody. So we thought that this generic and standard aspect of the motorway was maybe a quality that allowed for the certain emancipation of social behaviors. You may sometimes find that in around train stations, that with strange districts around train stations for some reason, because I think you have lots of foreigners, something like that. So next to that book, we were asked by a magazine that was called Beyond. There were 3 issues of this one. We were part of the first one that was associating architects and authors like Bruce Sterling. And they asked us, could you write a fiction? Could you write a story? First time ever. It's a very difficult thing to really write a real story. So we imagined a text that was slightly, that was semi-autobiographical, that was about a young reporter going 1 month along the motorway, but with more Ballardian tone. I'm referring to J.G. Ballard, which is quite an important reference to us. He's known for, I don't know if you know him, a science fiction writer who known for some of his novels were adapted to movies like Empire of the Sun or Crash, and he did that, I think, really incredible 3 novels. It's called the Concrete Trilogy, where he talks about pretty much the end of modernity. So we took one of his stories, as a base, because we're not writers, which is called Concrete Island. And in Concrete Island, you have this architect. He's a very famous architect working in London. It's called Maitland. There's often architects in Ballard's novels. And he drives his Jaguar. And at the end of the tunnel, he's blinded by the sun. And he falls into a hole in between motorway lanes. And he's unable to go out of this hole. He's trapped. And he lives like a sort of a modern Robinson, and comes out that it becomes a quite cathartic experience. He realized in the end of the text, he manages to find a way out, but he realizes that he couldn't find it because he doesn't want to go out. Simply, he was bored. He was enough with his job, his wife, his mistress. It just appeared that nobody ever looked for him because nobody knew where he was between all these different activities. So in our fiction, we imagined that all the stations had been bought by a company called Ventolin Inc. Ventolin, they sell sprays for asthma. And we imagined that they had bought all the stations in order to sell their illegal products through vending machines. So we made some illustrations. So in our story, we imagined that Maitland would not actually go back home, but he would stay on the motorway. That's the end of the story, because he did find in this context a lot more freedom that he ever had in his own home. Here, just a quote. I find it funny, this connection between Ed Ruscha and Ballard. But Ed Ruscha actually did a series of painting using some of the text from Ballard, and I think this one comes from the novel that's called High Rise, which is part of his Concrete trilogy. So here we are. We are really on the book. That was the whole story to tell you for how long the highway has been with us. And I had to say it was a long time ago. So it was really unconscious, and we were looking for a thread within our own archive, and we didn't know we had made chapters and stuff. And there's a moment we thought, yes, this motorway was there at the beginning. We were more academics than architects. We're doing videos and text installations, not yet buildings. And within 20 years, we started building a few things. And we thought, yes, this object of the motorway, apart from its aesthetics, also interrogates modernity. That was pretty much our question, its legacy. And when it started 20 years ago, for us, modernity was an old thing. It was like a rusty machine. It was still very much criticized, and you could say, well, it still works, but maybe it needs some update. There are good parts, we should keep, and there's some parts that have to be changed, because the context is different. You have new issues, you have gender issues, you have ecological issues, and you have that feeling of a crisis, especially in the West, from where we're talking from. And we thought the object was quite appropriate to, help capture that difficult relation we had with modernity in a quite metaphorical way. So these are some, I'm just flipping through the books where you see that we just arranged I'm not showing you the text because they're hard to read on such a screen, but you see we just arranged all the, study models, sketches, photos from the office, travels, attempts, lots of things. Mostly we never built. And you had some themes like grids, circles, and runes. And some of the that's how we found actually the themes, the 4 themes I'm going to talk about quickly now. So this is basically our archive. We were trying to make sense of it. Well, there's plenty of them. Even skatebook. These were videos, images I will tell you more about that give an opportunity to develop specific themes. So you see, it's not about the motorway, but we thought maybe the motorway is slightly underneath all these images. So these are our 4 chapters. So in the end, we thought maybe if we look at the motorway, we can pick up a few figures that are recurring along motorways, and we may try to interpret them as architectures, as types, but not architectural types, but something in between a figure that is evocative, a type, because a type is something that repeats itself. So first we had totems, which for us were these vertical structures like billboards, antennas. You have always some along the motorway. The second one is runes, and we were thinking like retaining walls along motorways that stop the rock from falling onto the road. Concrete islands, connection, reference to J.G. Ballard, which are sites that are usually hidden next to motorways and has a slight connection with utopia. And phantom crowds, which correspond to public car parks, which can be filled with crowds or empty, which relates to the themes of public space. So I'm going to go through the 4 themes, show you some images that were points of reference, not developed, just you had only fragments in the book, and how they somehow, for some reason, fell into the field of architecture. We just use them for our own project. So that's a series by Eric Tabouchi, which is called 26 Abandoned Gasoline Station. So is making a clear reference to Enrocher again. So what's funny here is it shows a series of canopies that have been abandoned, but I think the funny thing is the way they've been reused to become sometimes something else, like a shop, a restaurant, home or something, a pizza place, whatever, whatever. So, and we found another reference that for us sort of, more or less, fell into the topic of the totems, because the story is quite funny. This is called Sea Land. It's a military platform that was built in 1942 on the Thames estuary by the British Army, and it was meant to protect Britain from German missiles, and they did their work. It did work apparently pretty well. Until the 60s, where a major base, Paddy Road base, ex-major from the British Army, realized that there was one of them that was not in Britain, it was in international waters. So it did not belong to anybody. It was just appropriable. So he decided with his wife, Joan, to go there and declare that platform as a private state. as a sovereign state. And he created a special money, a passport, well, everything, that defines a state. And he proclaimed himself as a prince, and Joanne was the princess. And this became a kingdom somehow. And it has quite a funny history. This is the map. It's funny how they were Mansell forts. Mansell is the engineer, actually, who built them. And they look quite good because there are two. There's some. This is the concrete one, and there's some that made of metal. Looks like spiders. Quite interesting architecturally. And they were built on a barge. And then they were pulled, to the Thames. They would find a sandbank, a hollow part in the estuary, and then they were sunk till only the platform is left above the water. This is the prince and princess couple. Then they inaugurated the platform, and the story is quite funny. I think from the 60s on, it was part of the news because it's such a funny story. He would travel with his helicopter. He wouldn't take his little boat. And the British Army tried to get them out. They sent really like ships and stuff because they were threatened. They felt threatened by these 5 people around here. And even the prime minister tried to do a coup d'etat, tried to take over the platform. And this was all making the news in Britain. I did present it once in England, and everybody knew about this platform. So I think there's plenty of micronations such as these. Some say 400 or 700, I don't know. But I think this one is quite special because of its architecture. I would say the architecture matters because I think, these big columns, these fragile platforms, you don't have cannons anymore. You want to climb it. There's something, you want to come with the helicopter. Also, the British Army couldn't take it. The fort did resist till the end and even became like exactly the opposite of what it was supposed to be, because at the beginning it was supposed to defend the British nation, then it became a threat. So I think the story is quite funny for that reason. But I think the architecture is the main thing. I mean, there are a few spaces within the columns, just more than the stairs. So it's a strange configuration. We always thought, let's try to use that. It's so powerful, and we did it finally after a few trials for a campus that is developing. It's now under construction in Belgium. This is the entrance of a campus, and we thought we would use 3 buildings to create sort of an entrance to at once bring together the flows and diverse them. The idea was that people would come with their cars and continue by bike or with a tramway. So there was this idea of shifting from motor-oriented mobility to pedestrian mobility. So there's a car park under construction, and there's this tower, which is pretty much like a watchtower that contains research labs and different activities for students. And here we use the cores, the technical cores, to build up the structures that holds the tower and leaves the center fairly empty and flexible to use. So I would maybe make some noise, huh? Okay. So the second figure is the runes. This is a series that we often used in our references, and I have to say the day we discovered them, we thought this should be the architecture we shall do. And this is a series of structures that go along Japanese roads. That series was taken by Toshio Shibata, a very obsessive photographer who's been focusing on gas stations and structures. So we thought, He's our blood brother. He's one of ours. We always found these structures fascinating. I think because we call them runes, but we call them joyful runes because I think they're halfway between construction and destruction. They are in a specific place where you don't know for sure when you look at them if they are growing on top of the mountains or if they are actually disappearing, under the grass or under the water that's rising here. And they maybe say something about the certain state of architecture that we call adolescence, a moment where you don't know where you want to grow, become an adult, or if you want to stay a child because you don't want to be bothered, with serious thing. So that refers to a number of buildings that we try to keep sort of unfinished. One of them was a chapel in Flanders. It's a competition we didn't win, fortunately, but we started as a stack of rocks, and it was in a very pretty rustic park with a river on the side, quite romantic surrounding, and we thought, let's do a little mountain here. Because the mountain also in religious text is all religion there's a mountain because it's the link between the heaven and the earth, and I guess that's why we have this pointy architecture in many religions. So we thought of doing this mountain, but at a certain point we're looking for a structure, because we needed a structure. Models were nice, but wouldn't make a building. So we took those structures from Japanese roads and build up sort of this mountain with the grass and with this idea of using water from the rain going down back to the river, and we imagined that the interior would be like a grotto, like a dark, strange space, going into the mountain. From the outside, it would be more like a little piece of geography. Third chapter, Concrete Island. So clear reference to J.G. Ballard's novel that we used, and then as an example, I found this highway interchange. It's along the Paris Ring Road. It's called Échangeur de Bagnolet. Bagnolet is actually the city that is next to Paris and used to be a communist city. And they built that ring road in the shape of a drop of water. And this ring road was actually designed by an architect, Serge Lana, who was the sort of official architect of the Communist Party, probably not officially, but he did quite a number of things. And of course, he had imagined quite a number of things in the middle of this interchange, which is enormous. Really, it's a really big thing. And there was a car park initially, and they imagined that the state it was. They even imagined one day to make a rock concert hall. This is the project by Jean Nouvel that he actually won, but it was like into the form of a spaceship, but it wasn't built ever. And what was built, of course, was a commercial center and some office buildings that are quite derelict today. There's a new study on the way. So the way we all self-interpreted this idea of the island was a series of buildings. I showed you the plan of this one, which was also almost built. No, we're pretty close. The mayor changed, didn't like it so much anymore. And this was called City of Virtual Reality. It was an infrastructure containing lots of things, including a stadium that was not meant to be built next to it, but we thought, bring everything together. And we thought it was pretty much like a pizza. You could put lots of things on it, but it would have to hold within 100 a circle with a diameter of 100 meters, basically. And the mayor was interested because he thought, yeah, we won't be able to fill it with everything, but we will ask companies, that creates an inside and an outside, and maybe there's an argument to attract companies working in new technologies. We didn't build it, but many years later we did that other building, which is sort of part of this same flat buildings that start with a quite non-existing surrounding. And I guess this kind of context forced us a bit to take as much space as possible in order to define public spaces that would come afterwards. The building every time comes first, and then there will be a square on the right with a new tramway line, and a new green park on the right. So the building sort of makes the connection between the two. The program is a quite typical program for offices, and we try, an office building is usually 18, 20 meters wide, with a third of it in the dark, and a very interesting space. So we thought, can we try another configuration? And we took that 12 by 12 grid that allows all the spaces to be lit naturally, to be more flexible, but with smaller free floors. And within this frame of 12 by 12, we sort of created a street that goes through the building from the square to the park, and that is available for events. Now schools organize their events in this covered space. From the inside, the building is carved actually by patios and halls that bring natural light, so it couldn't be so high. So, and this 12 by 12 frame, I didn't put them, sorry, I forgot the plans. And the building from the outside looks like, we thought it would look like really uniform, like a big concrete block, like a first stone, really, quite literally. But the interior would be much larger than the outside. We thought had to be a feeling that doesn't look like much. And then once you enter, you get natural light, you get some openings, of course. And the last part, the phantom crowd. Initially, it was all about car parks, which are recurring also along the motorway. And this is a photo series by Alex McLean. It's slightly different from Ed Rush's, probably also a reference. But he's not using a helicopter, but a small plane. So he's taking the photos from lower, so you see the life usually. What's going on in the car parking? You say some are filled with cars, and we found this in Boston. We'd seen it many years ago, and we saw it also not so long ago. This layered. This vertical car park in Boston, which is quite interesting. I think it was built in the 50s, renovated in the 70s and 80s. And it has a Chinese market on the ground floor, a car park on the middle floors, and office buildings on the top. So it's a quite OMA-like building long before OMA even existed. And I have to say, we've always been interested in car parks because they represent a kind of public space that call for occupation, but not appropriation. I mean, a car park will remain a car park, but somehow when it's empty, you want to fill it with something. And that's why we call this chapter the phantom crowd, because even though a car park is empty, you can feel there's been someone before. You can feel traces of oil, of plastic bags. There's something of people who've been there before, and someone is going to come. And you just need a car of choice. Then the place is full of people. So we thought this once again. This is maybe the quintessence of public space to be not appropriated, because if someone appropriates a place, then it's not yours anymore. It's not public, it's private. But occupation is kind of different thing. You want to maybe appropriate it more collectively. So we thought maybe this car park thing, if you imagine you bring all the car parks built along motorways, they do represent the most radical public space ever imagined and even constructed. You don't have any equivalent. And we thought this idea of superimposing different public spaces is kind of attractive to us. And we used it in one of our earlier building, which is a student center in the University of Paris-Saclay. It's close to Paris. And when we started that project, the place was fairly empty. There were a few buildings from the 70s and 90s. And it was like a new town, something we don't do anymore in France. I mean, it's over. It's been quite difficult to deal with. And we were asked, well, this is going to be a new place of intensity with lots of activities and students and researchers and everything. And we were like, well, really? Because there's not even a street, a square. There was nothing, just fields. So we imagined that, once again, this building had to have its own intensity in itself. It couldn't rely much to anything else. So we imagined to superimpose a series of sort of plates. We did a small urban square first, but we thought the roof is going to be used for sport activities, basketball, and every floor has a specific activity. There's a cafeteria, there's a collective restaurant, which is the main activity, and some sport rooms on the upper floors. And ideally, I'm just digressing a bit. I was at this same time, there was two student centers that had been built, one in Chicago, the McCormick OMA Center and the Sana Rolex Center in Lausanne, and they were two very flat buildings away. And we thought, if we make it flat, nothing's going to happen here, and we don't have that enough space. So we thought we need to find a continuity from within, and we sort of suggested to create this vertical stair that we, compared to a vertical street. We said it's going to be a vertical street. It's going to be really wide because we are going to gather all the fire exit in the middle. This is absolutely forbidden. I mean, it's like not two stairs, but we have this idea to say, but this is an exterior. It's not. It's like in a Klein bottle. You're outside. You go inside, but you stay outside. There's wind. There's rain. It's full of moss now, so it's a building that is as much exterior space as it is interior space. It's actually half and half. So its size actually looks bigger than it is in reality. So that stair become the central figure of because it crosses all the different plates, and this allowed us also to give access to the different activities, even though one was closed. Basically, the idea was to get rid of the entrance hall. That took us a long time, but we thought if we want these different activities to work at the same time, but one could be closed and one could be open, then we have to get rid of that, that key with with someone in the ring. It doesn't work. So we thought that stair will remain open as long as possible and distribute the different activities independently. See here, you're outside actually. And then you get to the roof from which you can have a view on this quite agricultural landscape and water towers you see at the back. And at night, you can see the lights that draws actually this way that remains lit all night long. And I think this somehow relates again to our gas stations, which are somehow urban because there's no density, but they are gathering places just only because they are open 24 hours a day, like a 7-Eleven, and we thought maybe this building can work like a 7-Eleven, the small shops that you can get your sweets or cigarettes anywhere night and day. So this is taking me to the conclusion. I've got no idea how long I've been talking. Okay. Too long. Almost too long. Okay. Conclusion. I try to find a conclusion. So maybe in reference to your introductions, I think I've been trying to bring together here to sort of highlight a field that is really at the intersection between the infrastructure and architecture, probably between the two, where the moment where they overlap, I think there's a field that's pretty much our field, that both as you were mentioning the research lab, which is about infrastructures, or department, which is about history, and the office, which sort of draws a lot on for its building on this imaginary. But we do not actually deal with the infrastructure as a question of massive construction, large scale. We never done such big buildings so far. We're not talking about heroic structures. We love to show structures, but they're quite stupid structures usually. It's more like you can see the inside of the building from the outside. So I think from these different themes, I realized afterwards, totems, runes, islands, ghosts, or phantoms, and I thought this relates not to the technical aspect of the infrastructure, but to the spectral aspect of the infrastructure. The modern infrastructure, as maybe the ghost of modernity, the thing that remains, that haunts us, that's still there. That thing we feel nostalgic for. We've never known it, like an old uncle or a grandfather that that died somehow, but that didn't die so well. That died quite badly. We forgot to do the mourning. We forgot to bury it. We didn't bury it. It died wrongly, and that's why all ghosts exist. They died, but they refuse to die really. So they come back to remind us something. They all come with a message. All ghosts do, and they try to say something to us. And I think maybe this sort of old school, those kinds of infrastructures are trying to say something about raise a historical perspective on architecture. Try to say something about the maybe the necessity today to rehabilitate a certain idea of modernity, more of the spirit of modernity, and ask us to reincarnate into a new project and new researches. So thank you for your attention. Well, we're planning questions. Yes. On mic?
Okay. So thank you for the presentation. Now maybe we can see if we have some questions about the lecture, which we think it was a great opening because it tackled a lot of issues, even providing, for example, these 4 categories. I don't know if you have any questions, even to open debate. Great.
Not too tough. Cool.
Thank you very much for a very inspiring lecture. I was wondering, I was very fascinated by the design methods and processes of your activity. And I was thinking that you have a kind of reverse method from, let's say, a meaningless infrastructure to a meaningful project of architecture. So how could you go from, we could say, from non-lieu by using Marc Auger's concept of the non-places, non-lieu? How could you transform them, and how for the first time in your career, what was the moment? When was the exact moment that from this concept of infrastructure you were able to transfer into architecture?
I don't know. I'm not sure I have such an original answer. I think Auger. I think we should simply think of the infrastructure likewise in reverse as public space. I think that's maybe what is lacking, and I think you're true to refer to Auger because his book has often been misinterpreted, even by academics who I realized do not read inside the book. They read the last page, I've realized. Because Auger says non-places are social places. He says it. For me, that's the big argument. He said hospitals, highways, they are public and social places. So they were not meant, even though they were not meant to be, social relations recreate themselves within these spaces because we live in them. And I think it's pretty much of a lesson for us to treat such non-places as places. But Auger's book for me is a very important one. But it should be read to the end of it. He only mentions it in a slight moment, and he starts by opposing non-places and places. It was taken also. This is an argument that was reused afterwards by Manuel Castells, also opposing places of spaces, the space of places and the space of flows, for instance. And I think these dialectics are quite, in my opinion, quite dangerous. I don't think that's one reason I initially worked on the motto of my PhD, because I thought, but these places are inhabited, and you can make a survey as Venturi did. Basically, the strong idea of Venturi was to investigate a landscape of emanating from the road, like a vernacular American landscape, but he actually used very classical method. He studied like Rome. He went like, let's look at the buildings, let's do the maps, look at the architecture, analyze it, and that was a strong point that this landscape was part of American history that had so far always looked at European cities. They hadn't considered themselves as such. And I think it was a strong argument to look at the infrastructure as also as a place. I mean, Las Vegas as a real city as much as Rome, and the Strip as it's a boulevard, as a boulevard as well. So it had this strong point as well from the beginning.
Thank you very much for the presentation. It was really fascinating. I'm really much interested in the scenarios and speculation publication you showed us. And I wanted to ask you, how do you integrate this all fictional things to your work and especially to your research? So yeah. Thank you.
I'm trying to find it. Yeah, well, we've been told many times that we were pretty much working with fiction. I'm not really sure how, in concrete ways. Sorry, it's far, huh? Oof, I put so many pictures. I think... what does it mean to have a fictional approach? I'm not sure. I think it's the effort to envisage what's going to be the life of the building as such. It's this effort, like when we were doing Saclay. I mean, it's a recurring thing. We thought, okay, it's going to be full of people. Okay, but it's nowhere, so it's going to be pretty empty. So it's going to should be like a casino or like an abandoned room, and then you start working with images, and I guess we do it with lots of images of reference. That's the method. I mean, the book is just, we took the pictures from the wall. We had a wall full of these images. We made a selection, and I guess this is purely a method. We may have done it a little bit more clearly. We did Venice Biennale at the same time as the book was released. We wanted to release the book at the same time with maybe a more explicitly fictional project that was a theater where events would take place. So we brought our own story. It was sort of a spaceship without any engine that couldn't fly off. Didn't know if it had landed or, it was an absurd object. But this was for us kind of a utopian place, not so much that it would raise a certain utopia. We don't have any, because it's hard to believe in the future today. I mean, it has to be future died in the 70s, but we had to reconstruct it pretty much the same way as the last radical projects from Archizoom or Super Studio did. I think they finished with fiction. They said they fictionalized the end of modernity in a quite interesting way, because you didn't know whether it was good or bad, And I guess we probably situated ourselves in this vein with lots of references to these architectures by creating a space, an installation that we thought would maybe help recreate a desire for the future. Not so much a future, because we're not sure of anything, but maybe the desire can be excited somehow, that we can try to, like science fiction is about trying to think elsewhere. For us, our argument was to say we need stories to imagine how different things could be, because this is not the case today. Today we are thinking ecological crisis. We have to act quickly, repair things, be careful, otherwise, we're heading towards the end of the world. So this is an expression of the lack of imaginary, the lack of fiction. So we thought, we have to reintroduce capacity to think through fictions. But I think we just started just before when it stopped. We thought it stopped, postmodernity, 20, 30 years, and then we said, okay, now let's start again.
Thank you. I don't know if you have any other questions. Yes. Oh.
Hi, thank you. I also found the lecture very inspiring. I was just curious about something that you said in the beginning about the highway. You said that the highway or the motorway could contain a lot of different activities, actually all the activities that the urban contains. And from the projects that you presented, I also kept thinking that they are kind of infrastructures in themselves, like they also contain a lot of different programs. And I wanted to ask if you're attracted to this kind of idea of architecture as an infrastructure, and if you seek out those kind of projects, or if they kind of come to you, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, we're definitely interested by using this idea that an infrastructure can contain many things. Probably what we took from it explicitly is the fact that always the form, the structure, the thing itself is very structured, is very determinant, but what it contains is a lot less determinant. I think what we use from examples of, infrastructures being invaded by migrants or whatever community. It says something about what we could do with architecture as well. Like we often think of a place that is appropriable as a nice, flexible space. And I would say infrastructures are nothing but flexible. They are the hardest, ugliest, toughest, hardest things ever. People hate them for that. But if you see the way they can be used sometimes by accident, then you may change your opinion about them. And I think, I would say, we use them through this dialectic of, hard and soft. This very strong, very hard, very soft. Like trying to stretch as much as possible the determination of what a space can do. I find, for instance, that anytime a road is cut just for pedestrian activities, there's never any better space. I think it happens quite often. A place has been dedicated for one thing to cars, and then suddenly you stop, no cars, and then you leave it for something else. Then it's way too big for what it's supposed to. It displaces us. I think there's an interesting aspect to use an architecture for something else, like the platform, the military platform. There's something interesting in playing between a structure that is meant to do something and what actually happens to it. The difference, the fact that this anti-functional aspect of the infrastructure is certainly the most interesting, I would say.
Thank you.
I don't know if we have any. We do.
What's your comment?
Hi, Gilles. Very nice lecture. I think it opens up to a lot of questions. I don't know if there's more time. I don't want to disrupt the whole schedule. There's so many discussions in this, but I think I love sort of how you take infrastructure and modernity and makes it an architectural project. I think that's a very important sort of departure. Also, in terms of we sort of, to my opinion at least, stuck in this modernity still, right? In many ways. And it takes so much space. At the core of it, we have the car culture. And since that started, we have sort of had explosive infrastructures, concrete masses all over the world. And there is such a dilemma in this because we all hate and love the car at the same time. We talk so much about against cars, especially in our, I think, world of architects and planners. But we also have cars, and we buy new cars, and now we have electric cars. And the second, we'll have autonomous cars. We'll have cars and cars and cars. So what I was wondering is how does that, in your work and your studies and research, this sort of a dilemma of modernity, modernism, how do you discuss that in terms of looking into future cities and planning? Because it's very few of those big infrastructures that we can actually convert to people spaces when we look at it.
I think you're true that we're sort of trapped in this, and the more we criticize modernity, the more we reproduce it. To me, when I hear criticism for, it usually related in terms of local identity or ecology and the students, and they tell you, why don't you still do that? Our ancestors were all wrong. We got it now. Now we got it. We're gonna do better. And I said, this is exactly the problem with modernity, that, you wipe out everything that was before. You reproduce this linear time that suggests that we are always more clever than our ancestors. So our ancestors are coming back. These are the ghosts, and they're saying, are you sure? Maybe, okay, some things went wrong. And that's the problem, I think, with these infrastructures. They were never thought They were thought like things are going to be so much better with us. And they never thought, hey, what if things go wrong? And we cannot destroy them, and and cannot reduce. You cannot shrink an infrastructures, and we stuck with them, and we can only add more. And we stay stuck in this movement of development, sustainable development. It's all about building more, going faster, adding more technology to solve the problems that technology have caused before. So we are just running forward, and we're just running faster and faster, and we are more and more modern, trying to solve the problem.
Going nowhere.
And we don't know. The thing today, we don't know where we're going. That's the problem with the question of the future, which is such a difficult, because we used to have a focal point, and I think that's why I am so nostalgic myself, because I would love to have a focal point and know exactly where we're heading. It'd be so, we would feel so much better. We're so anxious now. If we had a focal point, that would be clear. But nowadays we're building more and more, but we don't know where we're heading. We even, this whole narrative about the end of the world, which is scary. I mean, we're building more to push forward the end. So there's an imaginary of the end. Can be quite poetic. I mean, lots of movies about the end of an era. There's something quite nice about it. But it's also wrong, because we're still doing something, I don't know, it's the future, but not as before. It's, I would say, l'avenir, what is coming next. But I think there's a distinction maybe to make between the future it used to exist and what we are doing now. But it's a big political. I think we're having our own argument. We're a bit like warriors trying to defend something that is meant to lose. For sure. I mean, it's kind of anarchist point of view, and I love that point of view, because it's meant to fail. I mean, if anarchists don't want power, so they won't ever be right. But the experiment is worth it, I think. I mean, the notion of experiment, of trying for a short time, and we see if it works. Maybe it's slightly.
Maybe we could change the way we build infrastructure, or at least if we do the project, if we start talking about it more as actually a real, it's the core of modernity. It's the core of our problem somehow.
Yeah.
So how can we actually maybe, by looking at it into a more sort of poetic way, understand it in different ways? I think.
Yeah.
I think it's such an important discussion that is very, very. It's neglected politically because it's the answer to all crises. We just build more.
In urban planning, I think there's a difficult tool that we always work with. 2050, we have these focal points.
It's a lovely number.
It's a good number. And we change it every time. We had the other one, the 60s, 70. So we are trying to rebuild so we could see that's where, the future is coming back somehow. But we don't have the ideal. I say modernity, I don't say modernism. I'm trying to say that the spirit of collectiveness, of equality. I mean, there was some quite generous ideas, and I guess maybe the potential failure of things, which is not easy to raise with clients and cities. I think could be an interesting tool. You say we can do that. I mean, working with scenarios or coming back, deconstruct and. Building that you can deconstruct, difficult also to defend, but that's also another imaginary. I don't know. And it's true that we're not really doing it still, but it's good to try. No?
Very important.
Yeah.
I'm also a believer we will solve it at some point. It's
yeah.
We have to be optimists.
Yeah.
Thanks. So maybe we need to close the session talking about future. We have the the coming sessions. So thank you again, Gilles, for the lecture. And so maybe now we just take a 15 minutes break.